Shalom, brothers and sisters. Shalom, brothers and sisters. Giving honor and praise to the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. My name is Yeshaya Yisrael of the tribe of Dan of the nation of Israel. This particular teaching, I can't say that it's not going to be long because we're going to be going over 50 slides. And the title of this, as you can see, is called The Updated Books. Now, for those who know, in 2016, I published some books through a company called Create Space. Me and Create Space didn't see eye to eye and everything, so I went to another company called Lulu. And sadly, me and Lulu did not see everything eye to eye. And so I went to a company called KDP, which is Kindle Direct Publishing, which is directly involved, not as a second company to, but associated fully with Amazon itself. So that's the situation in that particular regard. The Egypt Talk book, Deuteronomy 28:15-68, History Untold to the Masses, Old Testament Israelites Respond to Messianic Israelites, and Hebrew is Easy, Volume 1, brothers and sisters, is what we're going to be talking about in this particular presentation. Okay. Without any further ado, let's go on to the next slide. Egypt Talk and Writing. Did the Torah come from the culture of Tameri? Yeshaya Yisrael. That's a question that I'm asking in that regard. Okay. The ISBN number is 978 109 8906 So if you were to go to ISBN search and you were to put in that ISBN number, this book will show up. I did it myself actually too. This is available on Amazon.com. The genre of this book is to explain when the Exodus happened, who was the Pharaoh of the Exodus, and to show the connection between Egypt of old and the spiritual Egypt of today. So that right there, brothers and sisters, is what this particular book gets into in genre. Okay? Let's go on, if we will, to the next slide. Thank you. Part of the Egypt Talk book. The Assyrian and Babylonian kings mention several of the kings of Israel and Judah in their records. List of those kings are as follows: Ahab, Omri, Jehu, Menahem, Hoshea, Pekah, Ahaz, Jehoiakim, and Manasseh. Now, brothers and sisters, in getting into this particular aspect right here, we want to sit there and highlight this for edification purposes, if we will. All right? Ahab, Omri, Jehu, Menahem, Hoshea, and Pekah. What you see there highlighted in the yellow were the kings of Israel that are mentioned by other kings' names. And what you see about to be highlighted here in the red, Ahaz, Jehoiachin, and Manasseh. Now, the point in mentioning this is because if you have Babylonian and Assyrian kings in their records speaking about the kings of Israel and Judah, then how in the world can anybody in history try to say that the Israelites never existed in history? This is something we want to point out, and this is something we want to talk about for edification purposes. So if we're looking, for instance, at Ahab, Omri, Jehu, Menahem, Hoshea, and Pekah, who were kings of Israel, brothers and sisters, they obviously had ancestors. All right? And if we're looking, brothers and sisters, at Ahaz, Jehoiakim, and Manasseh, they too obviously had ancestors. So as pointed out, the kings that you see highlighted in the red are the kings of Judah that are mentioned by other nations. And the kings that you see highlighted there in the yellow are the kings of Israel that are mentioned by other nations. The Assyrian king Shalmaneser III mentions Ahab, king of Israel, in a war that the Bible does not even record. So we have to deal with having an open mind and not tunnel vision. Now, what do I mean, brothers and sisters? Once it comes down, if we getting into this, all right, want to underline something. Once it comes down to and not tunnel vision. Tunnel vision in this regard, what I'm talking about is everything must be Kemet, everything must be Egypt, everything must be Kemet, everything must be Egypt. That's tunnel vision. That is saying if Egypt don't have a record of something, that means that it can't be true. That right there is folly, brothers and sisters. All right, so we just want to point that out for edification purposes, that there's no way, shape, form, or fashion that one is just going to sit there and say that this must be it in Egypt and anything else is amiss. There were discussions in the past in which people have actually said that Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon didn't exist, that the Queen of Sheba did not exist. We understand what we're saying? So this is the tunnel vision that we're talking about for reason and purposes. In ancient Egypt, there were 32 dynasties. Of the 32 dynasties, we see that the 15th, 16th, 22nd, 25th, 27th, 31st, and 32nd were ruled by those who are not natives of Kemet or Egypt. The 15th and 16th dynasties. Now, I want to take the time out now and highlight this, and we're going to see why later on. I want to use a different color highlighter. All right. When we get back into when it says the 15th and 16 dynasties were the Hyksos from Asia. We want to emphasize that, and you're going to see why as we go along in this. The 22nd were Putites or Libyans. The 25th were Cushites. The 27th and 31st were Persians. The 32nd were Greeks. The last Greek ruler of Egypt was Ptolemy the 15th. After the rule of the Greeks over Egypt, Egypt became a Roman province. Is this why Egyptologists are so fascinated about Egypt, or are they researching a place they conquered? Not to sound arrogant, but not one king on the throne of Israel or Judah was not of Israel or Judah. So, what are we saying? Ancient Israel, right? When we get right down into it, from the era of Saul, that will be one dynasty, if you will. All right. Then you had, well, dynasty and then Ishbosheth, if you will. That would be like one dynasty. Then you had David all the way down to the era of Zedekiah. That would be another dynasty. But when you look at the northern kingdom, you had it, brothers and sisters, to where there were 9 different dynasties. The northern kingdom of Israel had 9 different dynasties. The southern kingdom of Judah had 1 dynasty. And if you count Saul and Ishbosheth as a dynasty, that makes it all together between the whole house of Israel, 11 different dynasties. One of the things to point out, brothers and sisters, is that the people who promote, in many cases, the Kemetic understanding of things, they attempt to say high and mighty, we have 32 dynasties, we have 32 dynasties. But what you don't realize is the more dynasties you have, the sloppier your kingdom looks. We understand. The more dynasties is within one people, the sloppier it looks. It's just like in today's time, if you have 18 different jobs on your resume, it looks like you can't hold it down or you a quitter, one way or the other. So when brothers praise themselves by saying, well, us in Kemet, we had 32 different dynasties, that's not a good look when you get right down into it. Consistency is important. The fact that you had different dynasties shows a lack of consistency. All right, so let's go on, if you will, brothers and sisters, to the next part. Though spiritually some of the kings of ancient Israel and Judah, well, most of them were wicked, we see that all the good and bad kings of Israel and Judah were of their own people. All right, so this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. Now, I want to give a hint, if you will, brothers and sisters, all right, and want to go into, let's say, the blue right here. Hopefully this will work. All right, the king. Nope, that didn't work. Let's go into the eraser. Sorry about that. Let's underline this. The Assyrian king Shalmaneser III. You do know that Shalmaneser III, the king of Assyria, brothers and sisters, he fought in what is referred to as the Karkar battle. And that's when the Israelites are mentioned in that particular regard. That's the battle that speaks of the Israelites that the Bible itself doesn't talk about. All right, so let's go on, if you will, to the next slide. Continue. In the 6th to 12th century AD, We see that Islam was rife in the earth. We see that blacks were made to convert to Islam. Today, we see Muslims in Africa. Also, there are, as J.A. Rogers state, West Africa has black Jews also. We see that there are Muslims in Africa. But what can we say of there being, quote, black Jews in Africa? J.A. Rogers, in his book, 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro, he stated that West Africa has black Jews also. How can we state, brothers and sisters, about the authenticity about there being black Jews in Africa? One of the things we want to point out is that the Jewish men, that is to say the Sephardic and the Ashkenazi Jews, they did not go proselytizing in Africa. Proselytizing is to say, I want to convert you to my belief. You understand? The teachings of the Talmud and the teachings of Judaism and the teachings of the Zohar and the teachings of the Shulchan Aruch was not imposed on people in Western Africa. Islam and Christianity was. Quote unquote Judaism, which is not even of the Torah, was not even brought to people in Western Africa. So how then, with that being the case, can we look and sit there and see, as J.A. Rogers points out in his book, 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro, that, quote, West Africa has black Jews also? Did the white Jews do to blacks in Africa as Muslims in Africa did to blacks? No. There was no, quote, jihad against those of the El Sharia or holy war against those of the days of ignorance, quote unquote, as was done to blacks by Arabs in Africa. So how can we account for the records left by Mungo Park? Let's underline that. Leo Scipio Africanus, let's underline that. J.A. Rogers, let's underline that. And Nahum Schultz, among others, who say that the blacks fled from Israel, the land, during the Greek and Roman Empire and scattered in West and North Africa. This is something we want to point out for edification purposes. Besides the situation of the Beta Israel being made in the 20th century to become, quote, Jewish and adopt Talmud and do Judaism, there is no mass conversion by force or otherwise in any part of Africa to Judaism. Also, the Beta Israel were noted as being Israelites prior to the European Jews' existence. If anything, if we look at the fact that the Beta Israel, who are called Falashas, was shot at by the Ethiopians while they were being airlifted to go to Israel, we see the Israelites were disliked by Africans. So when they did what is referred to as Operation Solomon in 1991, the Cushites or the Ethiopians themselves were actually shooting at the airplanes with guns. Some state that Israel copied the belief in one God from Akhenaten, who ruled in the 18th dynasty. Obviously, people knew about believing in one God before Akhenaten. Akhenaten, according to the Torah, would have been wicked. Akhenaten believed in the Son as God. Such a doctrine as that is against the teachings of Torah. Belief in one God and belief in the Most High God are two different concepts. So the point in mentioning that is because some people try to say, like the guy Sigmund Freud in his book Moses and Monotheism, that author attempts to sit there and state that Akhenaten's belief in the one God as the Son, or the Son as being a quote one God, is where Moses got the concept of monotheism from. But such is actually not the case, brothers and sisters. All right. So this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. All right. Let's go on, if we will, to the next slide. White God to me. Now, this right here is something that actually happened, brothers and sisters, online, right? And it was in part due to a video that the guy who's a famous Egyptologist and Kemetic scholar by the name of Ashra Kwesi, he did a video, and in the video he was saying in so many words that the Asiatics, aka in this case the Hyksos, were white. Now this is something that a white guy, who when I made a comment 3 years ago, said that the Hyksos were not that, right? This is something that that was sent to me. And this is, check this out right here for edification purposes. And we're going to sit there and dissect how this kind of thing goes over this. Nope. The Hyksos were not black. Now, this is his statement to me. Nope, the Hyksos were not black. There are tons of depictions of Hyksos tanned or not that show them clearly as Caucasian. Afrocentrics teach that all Semites, Canaanites, Hyksos were not black before Clyde Winters decided to blackwash even the Canaanites, Semites, Hyksos, and basically all people under the sun. Besides, Caucasians are dark when they have a suntan. So regardless whether the Hyksos were depicted deeply tanned, white or light brown, they clearly were not Negroid but Caucasian people. Now, this is something that they actually teach in some colleges, believe it or not. The European man trying to fit his way in something. Nice try, though. That's what he said to me, bleached. You can remove all colors of depicted Nubians, and you can still see that they are racially black or Negroid. Plenty Egyptian carvings without color show Nubians and Asiatics / Semites, and you can see that the Nubians had black features and the Semites, Hyksos, sharp Caucasian features. Let's see what this guy's talking about. Let's go in, because we're going to sit there and cut this right here, right? Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, because they swear black people don't read. Let's go on. Why should historians bleach the depictions of the Hyksos and not the reddish or light brown Egyptians? They had a great civilization and not the Hyksos. Now, let's stop at that line right there. They, the Egyptians, are said by this white guy online as to have a great civilization. So, in other words, it's basically a claim of any great civilization, and let's attach ourselves to it. Saying that the Hyksos did not have a great civilization. See, these are kind of like words that somebody is out there throwing out and playing, but obviously the Hyksos had to mean something to the great civilized Egyptians, because they certainly tried to sit there and erase the memory of the Hyksos out of Egypt. So let me go on. Now, this is what the person wrote to my response, because I was saying that Asra Crazy is wrong and trying to sit there and depict the Hyksos that came out of Asia as white. Now, this is what this person said to me. Let's go to the response. Me to white guy. Caucasians are dark when they get a suntan. No, they get sunburned. So let's go back to this portion right here, brothers and sisters, right? In the highlighter, when it says, I want to highlight it in yellow, if you will, right? The person said, besides, Caucasians are dark when they have a suntan. So let's look at this right here, because you emphasizing Caucasians and so forth and so on. So let's look at see what really happens, right? Caucasians are dark when they get a suntan, question mark. No, they get sunburned. That's why they sit there and use sun block, because they're trying to block the sun. So when this person try to respond back by saying, oh, well, what happens essentially is they are tanned when they get a suntan, and they're darker. Stop playing games. You understand? Let's go on. The people called Hyksos did not call themselves that. So, according to Radford in his book, Egypt, Canaan, and Israel in Ancient Times. Now, I'm going to give the proper respect in that regard. And as an author, underline the name of the book, because when you cite a book, you're supposed to underline it when you're dealing with aspects of authorship. All right. So let's look at this right here. What I did in response was say Radford, which is a person who happened to be Caucasian, that spoke about the Egyptians, the Canaanites, and the Israelites in ancient times. The identity of the Hyksos can be known lexically and linguistically. So, if that is the case, we can look at the names of the rulers of Dynasty 16. Now, remember earlier when I said, brothers and sisters, that Dynasty 16 is important? Here's the reason why. We see Hebraic / of Hebrew names. Dynasty 16 being of the Hyksos. See, this is the portion that we want to get into. If Radford, who was a white man, if Radford is white, then at least some of the Hyksos were, not where we are, but were of Hebrew in speech. Because when you look at the last names of Dynasty 16, they have Hebraic names. Yoab, Amu, and Yaakov Har. Yaakov Har, Amu, and Yoam. Those are Hebrew words. And that was part of the Hyksos. So let's go in, brothers and sisters. Hebrew is listed as an Afro-Asiatic language. Sorry about that. Hebrew is listed as an Afro-Asiatic language like Aramaic. The Aramaic language was spoken by the Arameans. Aram was called Syria by the Greeks. The Aram people were depicted in the 18th dynasty. They were not white. So what are we seeing right here, brothers and sisters? We see that this particular person right here tried to sit there and say, besides, Caucasians are dark when they have a suntan. So according to this, the Hyksos was not black, but are darkened when they get a suntan. And this particular person goes on to say, plenty Egyptian carvings without colors show Nubians and Asiatic Semitics, and you can see the Nubians had black features and the Semite Hyksos sharp Caucasian features. Let's remember that this person said that the Hyksos are shown with sharp Caucasian features. So let's go and see what we're talking about for edification purposes. Let us take a look at this police, pretty police people. Now, when I said P-A-L-E-A-S-E, I spelled that wrong on purpose. Like police, police. That's why I spelled it like that on purpose. Who you see there on the top, brothers and sisters, these are the Hyksos in the tomb of Kemunhotep. So we can sit there and see what we're talking about. All right? That's from Dynasty 12 in the Middle Kingdom of Egypt. So from the tomb of Kemunhotep, this right here is how we're looking, brothers and sisters, at the people that later on became known as the Hyksos. So as a person mentioned in there, I see afros, I see beards, I see people with hair that is going down and that's not quote unquote bouncing. I remember being in college and white women that was in the college used to talk about how their hair bounces and so forth and so on. Those people here ain't bouncing. That's part of the Hyksos. That's part of the Asiatics that the person was talking about. But we have to see, brothers and sisters, what was done. Let's go on to the next part, if we will. Now, this right here is what I was talking about, the bleached image that they present of the Hyksos. So let's look at this right here, this person right here, as you see circled in the red there. All right? Then, as we see here, circled in the red there. Now, some of the people in the Kemetic community, like Ashra Kwesi and others, will sit there and say, this is the black man triumphant over the white man. But no, this is a fake bleached depiction of it. That's what it is, brothers and sisters. So let's look at this fake image that they have here of these particular Hyksos, right? That was being subdued by Amos or Tut, whoever that would be, of Dynasty 18. Let's go back. Remember that image that we just saw, right? The person said this. Besides, Caucasians are dark when they have a suntan. So, brothers and sisters, if the Caucasians are dark when they have a suntan, and the Hyksos, by the time they were kicked out of Egypt, was already in Egypt for 200 years, how can we say that that is the depiction of them? Would they not by default have been darker? They swear our people are ignorant. This is why meticulous reading and meticulous studying is very important, because they're going to try to sit there and say that the Hyksos out of Asia look like that. But brothers and sisters, the Asiatics did not look like that. Let's see how they looked. First off, let's go into the map that we're talking about. Here we see circled there in the red Egypt. Then we have Canaan. And I picked this one on purpose because it shows the Kassite. The Kassite dates, brothers and sisters, to the 19th and 18th century BCE, which was the ancestors of the Hyksos. Now, the person that I mentioned earlier, Radford, he stated in his book that the people known as the Hyksos came from the Syria, Palestine area. Palestine that they're talking about, brothers and sisters, all right, wanted to show where that was at, is over in this area here. Because Hadrian of Rome named that particular land there, brothers and sisters, Palestine, in order to try to rid the name of Israel out of it. You know, somebody asked how many white peoples I know have black hair. I know some who have it, but the majority don't. The majority that I know don't. See what they did when you're dealing with white people, they got like blonde hair, reddish brown hair, some have black hair, auburn hair, and so forth and so on. So when they show that image that we went over earlier, when all of them look like the same with that black hair, that's how you know it's a fake picture. Because all of them they don't roll in crews with all black hair like that. You understand? So let's go on, brothers and sisters, to the next part. Now, we have here Aram, Syria, Damascus, the capital of such. This whole area here, brothers and sisters, is where the Arameans, which were later on called Syrians, lived. The Arameans is who I was speaking about earlier in my response back to that guy. So let's see, brothers and sisters, this right here. Cush, Aram, and Kemet. Now, why did I point this out, brothers and sisters? Cush is right here. And we want to point something out. And I want people, please, to remember certain things. Let's remember this person shown as the Cushite has a feather in one's head. We're going to point this out for reason and purposes. Remember that. Then we see Aram, or they say the Shemite, or their mispronunciation as Semite. Then we got Cushite, pardon me, the Kemite, or the Kemetic person. We got Ethiopia, Syria, and Egyptian. Do you know who this person is? This happens to be a woman. This is who they say is depicted as Queen Nefertari. So if that is the case, brothers and sisters, and if that is, brothers and sisters, how the ancient Egyptians looked according to one of their queen's images, this is taken from the book Before the Mayflower, written by Laurent Bennett Jr. You see how that Egyptian is looking? Do you see how that Cushite is looking? And do you see how the Asiatic or the Amu is looking? Brothers and sisters, if you've seen all of them, you would say they're all black people. You understand? So this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. So I want to emphasize something in regards to that guy's statement. When he said that, oh, well, besides, Caucasians turn darker or get darker when they get a suntan. No, they do not. As pointed out earlier, they get sunburn. And brothers and sisters, this horrid depiction that they have, as we're going to show one more time, of the Hyksos, if the Hyksos were being driven out of Egypt, brothers and sisters, about 200 years after being settled in Egypt, and they get darker in the sun, according to the person, then how in the world they still looking like that? Somebody done sat there and presented a falsehood. That's how. See, they didn't think black people were going to sit there and get into certain things. You understand? Let's go on, if we will, to the next slide. Deuteronomy 28, verses 15 to 68. History untold to the masses. All right. Deuteronomy 28, verses 15 to 68. This is a book you can get on Amazon. The ISBN number 978-109-908-4485. The genre of this book is to explain why we say we are the descendants of the ancient Israelites. This book explains the Hebrew of Deuteronomy 28:68, and the matter of Munta of Rome too is discussed. Because see, Munta of Rome is what Christian apologists come to Israelites with by saying, oh, they were taken by Hadrian's market and they was brought to Egypt. All of that is explained in that book, brothers and sisters. All right, Deuteronomy 28:68 is not sitting up there trying to sit there and talk about Titus of Rome. And citing Munta, the Roman historian, is explained in detail in this particular book for those who are interested. Let's go on, if we will, to the next slide. Thank you. Part of the book on Deuteronomy 28. This writing here, based on Deuteronomy 28:68, is because many attempt to state that the Israelites are incorrect in what we are saying. That verse, yes, it is speaking of the Atlantic slave trade and not the matter of Titus of Rome. According to some, the verses between Deuteronomy 28:48 and 28:68 are only in regards to the Israelites and the Romans. Some have said the eagle that swooped down on the Israelites are the Babylonians. One thing to shut that down in respect is the fact that verse 49 says, a nation who you know not. Yet the Israelites knew the Babylonians. And this is why it's important to point out, because Chaldea and Babylon was adjacent, and Abraham came from Ur of Chaldees. Okay, let's go on, if you will, to the next slide. Another may say that the language which you knew not is speaking of the Babylonians. Yet the lingua franca of the time when spoke. Some kings of Israel have Aramaic names. Now, why am I pointing that out? I remember one time doing a presentation and the person was behind the PowerPoint or whatever like that, trying to sit there and combat what I was saying to the people that was in the chat. The person didn't have the heart or the respect as a man and a brother, you understand, to try to sit there and speak to me while the chat was going on live. I had to sit there, and when the conversation was done, look back and sit there and see what somebody was trying to do. Then the response was Moray, Moray, Moray. No, you wasn't saying Moray, Moray when you were saying I was out of my mind. Why do I emphasize that some of the kings of Israel had Aramaic names and some of the tribes of Israel had Aramaic names? Is because the mothers of the Israelites were Aramean. Leah and Rachel were Aramean women. They were the daughters of Laban of Padan Aram. Padan Aram, Aram, Aramean. Padan Aram, the word Padan means plain, like the Great Plains. All right? So this is something we want to point out for edification purposes in that particular regard. All right? This must be understood from 3 points: biblical, historical, and lingual. I want to state that the recent attacks, quote unquote, online by the Christians to the Israelites in regard to our claim of verse 68 is only to support the religion of Christianity and to have a foothold. See, because when we're saying we are the Israelites, by default, we're saying that we're the children of the Most High. Christianity would tell you somebody else is the son of God. So the Israelites can't be the son of God, and that the Israelites be the so-called black people in the Western Hemisphere, because then Christianity's stance doesn't hold. So this is why you find them fighting so hard when they try to even cite Jewish people who don't even believe in Jesus as a source. That's the spirit that made me want to write this book. All right, let's go on. And it says this. Deuteronomy 28:45 says, and all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou didst not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. The fact remains that it says all these curses. Thus, we must read what the curses are to gain an understanding. The claim made that verses 48 to 68 is that it only happened in a matter with the Israelites with the Romans. Yet we see in Deuteronomy 28:53, and thou shalt eat the fruit of your own body, the flesh of thy sons and of thy daughters, which the Lord thy God hath given thee, in the siege and in the straightness wherewith thine enemies shall straiten thee. In the book of 2 Kings 6:24, we read, and it came to pass after this, that Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, we already went over the Arameans, right? Gathered all his hosts and went up and besieged Samaria. The capital of the northern kingdom was besieged. This occurred in the 9th century BCE. We see that the people were besieged and ate their children. Now, why do I emphasize that? Because if they're saying, according to some brothers and sisters, right, that Deuteronomy 28, verses 48 to 68, is only what happened in the matter with the Israelites and the Romans. Yet in between those verses, we see verse 53. Verse 53 started to be fulfilled in the time of the Arameans in the 9th century BCE. The Israelites and the Romans did not come to meet each other until the 1st century BCE. So it's over 800 years between the time of 2 Kings 6 and the time when Pompey came into Jerusalem. So how then, brothers and sisters, are people saying that verses 48 to 68 is only happening between the Israelites and the Romans, when we can see in between those verses is verse 53, and that started happening before the Israelites met the Romans? It's because they swear we don't read. Let's go on, brothers and sisters. Deuteronomy 28, verse 62 says, and ye shall be left few in number, whereas we as the stars of heaven for multitude, because thou didst not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God. So here we see that the people of Israel will be left few in number. Let's go on, brothers and sisters. And it says this. In the book of 2 Kings 10:32, we see, in those days the Lord began to cut Israel short, and Hazael smote them in all the borders of Israel. Hazael was the king of Aram. We already went over the Arameans. All right. And what does it say? Again, we see the Israelites cut short in numbers, and that is before the era of the Israelites and the Romans. See, let's go back to this part right here. See, we want to emphasize, because they're saying that Deuteronomy 28, 48 to verse 68 only happened between the Israelites and the Romans. But how then, if we see verse 62, which is between 48 and 68, how do we see that happening in the book of 2 Kings and there were no Romans there with the Israelites? Because they swear we didn't read. Remember, we're going to go over a part in this presentation because we were not even expected to read. See, reading for us was considered a crime, and we're going to show that as we go along in this particular presentation, brothers and sisters. All right, so setting this back up on my computer. Give me 1 second. I do apologize for that. I had to update the monitor computer that's along with the main computer line. All right, so let's go on. Again, we see the Israelites cut short in numbers, and that is before the era of the Israelites and the Romans. Let's go on, if we will, to the next slide. In Deuteronomy 28:63, we see, and it shall come to pass that as the Lord rejoiced over you to do you good and to multiply you, so the Lord will rejoice over you to cause you to perish and to destroy you, and you shall be plucked from off the land, whether thou goest in to possess it. Right? We see here that the Israelites were told that they will be plucked from off the land where they went to possess. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 1, verse 7, we read, your country is desolate, your cities are burned with fire, your land, strangers devour it in your presence, and it is desolate as overthrown by floods. Psalm 79, verse 7 says, for they have devoured Jacob and laid waste his habitation. Psalms 124 says in part, then the waters had overwhelmed us, the stream had gone over our soul. Then the proud waters had gone over our soul. Then the proud waters, and let's remember in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 7, it says what? As overthrown by floods. Floods, waters. Let's go on. The above shows us that the waters in Psalms 124 and the floods in Isaiah 1:7 are the nations that Psalm 79:7 says, for they have devoured Jacob and laid waste his habitation. The point is that all this happened before the time of the Israelites and the Romans. It is the thought of the Christian who comes against the Israelites in a matter of Deuteronomy 28:68 that it all began from verse 48 with the Romans and ended with the Romans. See, this is what we want to point out because they got to go with that point, that so-called point, because they got to be able to defend Christianity. See, they sit there and try to present Israel or the Israelites ended in 70 AD. In 70 AD, that was it. No, it wasn't it. Because the significance of 70 AD is only that, and it's not a light thing, is only that the temple was destroyed. The war that we hear about that went from 66 AD to 73 AD, brothers and sisters, doesn't even sit there and cannot only be closed up in 70 AD. So let's go on, if we will, brothers and sisters. The point is that all this happened before the Israelites and the Romans. It is the thought of the Christian who comes against the Israelites in the matter of Deuteronomy 28:68 that it all began from verse 48 with the Romans and ended with the Romans. If we remember that Deuteronomy 28:45 says, all these curses shall pursue and overtake thee, we can see it began to happen while Israel was still in the land, and then it continued after they left the land. Why do we say, pardon me, that it continued after Israel left the land? Is because it says what? And it shall come to pass that as the Lord rejoiced over you to do you good and to multiply you, so the Lord will rejoice over you to cause you to perish and to destroy you. And you shall be plucked from off the land where thou goest in to possess it. So the plucking out of the land, and we remember, brothers and sisters, that the curses were to pursue the Israelites. Let's see what happened as we go on, brothers and sisters. Yea, or Israel has transgressed thy law and have turned aside, so as to not hearken, so as not to hearken to thy voice. So there have been poured out upon us the curse and the oath that is written in the law of Moses. The curse and the oath that is written in the law of Moses, the servant of God of Elohim, for we have sinned against him. So as we see in the book of Daniel, that's from Daniel chapter 9, by the way, that Israel was going through the curses that were written in the law of Moses. We explained that the curses began to happen before the Israelites and the Romans encountered each other. Deuteronomy 28:63 said that the people will be plucked from off the land, whether they went to possess. Then in Deuteronomy 28:64, we see, and the Lord shall scatter thee among all peoples, from the one end of the earth even to the other end of the earth. Now, this becomes important, and this is why I'm underlining it. And there you shall serve other gods, which thou hast not known, thou nor thy fathers, even with a stone. So to the Jewish man, oh, we Jews have always served Hashem and we've never worshiped no idols. I remember going back and forth with a Jewish guy about the identity of us black people being the ancient Israelites. And his reply was, oh yeah, those Africans, they were out there serving and worshiping bulls and cows. Let's look at this, brothers and sisters. Jeroboam, he was an Israelite. He worshiped the cow. Let's look at this. Ahab, he was an Israelite. He worshiped bulls as well. Let's look at this. Sorry to say, Aaron, he was an Israelite. He was the one who made the golden calf. A calf is a baby cow. Correct me if I'm wrong. So we got three different Israelites, all mentioned in the Old Testament, all mentioned in the scriptures, that were noted for worshiping calves and cows. So, brothers and sisters, When we look at this particular scenario, and the Jewish dude that's up there sitting up there talking about, oh, well, if you sit there and if you look, those people were worshiping cows. In other words, they can't be followers of the Torah. Followers of the Torah and lineal Israelites are two different things. There are Israelites who are wicked. There are people who are not Israelites that still strive to be righteous. Yisrael does not mean righteousness. Zedek means righteousness. So this is something we want to point out in that particular regard. So as somebody pointed out by Hathor, Hathor was the Egyptian goddess that the golden calf was mimicked after. Shalom, brother Joel speaks. When you read about the bulls and the calves that Ahab made, when you read about the bulls and the calves that Jeroboam made, how then can a Jewish man try to knock on us as quote unquote black people by saying, oh, your ancestors was worshiping idols and calves and cows? So were the people in the Tanakh, the Old Testament. So when the Jewish man says that we have always kept Hashem's Torah, we've always kept the laws, then you can't be the wicked people that Jeroboam was around. You can't be the wicked people that Ahab was around. You can't be the people that probably threatened Aaron's life. You better make us this calf. That's not you. The Jewish claim already shows that he is not the descendants of the ancient house of Israel that was wicked. See, their arrogance and their belligerence and their aspect of wanting to be, quote, the people, but they're thinking they're the people by their deeds, brothers and sisters, shows that they are not the people that they want to sit there and proclaim to be. They claim, once again, when they sit up there and say, we Jewish people have always kept the laws of Hashem, we've always kept kashrut, we've always kept the Torah, then you're not the Israelites of the Tanakh. Because the Israelites of the Tanakh did not keep kashrut. Because it says they eat high upon the mountains and eat swine's flesh. So you didn't keep kashrut, O house of Yisrael. They did not sit there and say, Lo eshtakawe lemaseka, I will not bow down to the graven image. No, Israel made it and bowed down to it. So Jewish man, I don't know who Hashem is that you keep on trying to talk about, but the one who created the heavens and the earth is the ones the Israelites turned their back on. So unless you're able to claim that and try to go to Deuteronomy 30 and say that we need to repent, you ain't got no future in this. You understand? All right, I don't mean to jump the gun, but somebody typed in the room, I can't find oral circumcision in Torah. All right, that's actually, my brother, a subject I was going to talk about in a future book. But I want to address that, being that you did type that into the group or into the room. What the man is talking about when he says oral circumcision, they refer to as mazisa ba'peh. And that is when they do the circumcision of a boy, they actually put their mouth on the baby's penis and suck the blood out. See how nasty that is? That is a Jewish custom. When they sit there and give a boy circumcision, one of the men over there sit there and put the penis in his mouth and suck the blood out. And there have been unfortunate cases of little boys getting herpes from that. That's the Talmudic teaching and practice. So don't ask me about the Mishnah in the Gemara. I'm good. I don't do that. Nah. All right. So let's go on, if we will, to the next part, if we will. Right? Yeah, there's been little boys. This is online too. You can look it up. They actually got herpes from that, unfortunately. All right. So let's go back to this. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all peoples, from the one end of the earth even to the other end of the earth. And there thou shalt serve other gods which thou hast not known, thou nor thy fathers, even wood and stone. From the plucking, we see the Israelites were scattered from one end of the earth to the other end of the earth. Then in Deuteronomy 28:65, we see, and among these nations, and we want to sit there and highlight this particular part for those who know where we're going. And among these nations, right? It goes on to say what? Shalt thou have no repose, and there shall be no rest for the sole of thy foot. But the Lord shall give thee there a trembling heart, and failing of eyes, and languishing of soul. So we see it went from plucking Let's underline what we're talking about. All right. It went from plucking to being scattered to worshiping idols to having no rest for the sole of your feet. The no rest for the sole of your foot means one is a nomad. You are always moving about. This being after the plucking and scattering happened. The people who say Deuteronomy 28:48 to 68 is only about the Israelites and the Romans do not explain why verse 65 says among these nations and among these nations. See, their argument in part is that Deuteronomy 28 from verse 48 to verse 68 is only about the Israelites and the Romans. So if that is the case, how do we see verse 65, which is between 48 and 68, saying all these nations? You know what I'm about to say, right? Because they thought we didn't read. Next part, please. Let us understand some dates. Assyria took Israel in 721 BCE. Babylon defeated Assyria in 609 BCE. Babylon took Judah in 586 BCE. Persia defeated Media in 550 BCE and Babylon in 538 BCE. Persia allowed some Israelites to go back to the land in 538 BCE. Persia defeated by Greece in 331 BCE. Greece under the matter after Alexander, the Ptolemies have ruled over Israel from 320, this is important, BCE until 168 BC, 198 BCE, when Scopus was defeated by Antiochus III. Antiochus III and Hannibal were buddies, you know. Remember Hannibal? We're going to get into that in this presentation so we can understand what we're talking about. Greece lost of Rome in two parts. One in 168 BCE in the Pydna battle when Paulus defeated Perseus. One in 146 BCE when Mummius defeated the Greeks in the Third Corinth battle. Now that right there is dates in history. You can take that to college and get graded, you know. In the book, Deuteronomy 28 that I wrote, that is part of the timeline. There is a chapter in here called chapter 6. And that right there is just a part of it. So what I wanted to do was show part of the book for advertisement purposes. Those who read the book and already know about chapter 6 of that book, you already know what it is. Giving honor to the Most High. That took a lot of work to put it together. Giving glory to the King of heaven and earth for that. Okay, now let's go on, if you will, to the next part. According to Titus, the Roman historian, it was Pompey who was the first Roman to gain entry to the temple in Jerusalem. Pompey made Jerusalem a Roman province in 63 BCE. After him, it was Julius Caesar. Then we get to Augustus, then Tiberius, then Caligula. Caligula conflicted with the Israelites. However, he was assassinated in 41 AD. Then we see Claudius. Now, let's understand something. You know the interesting part about this? Claudius was the uncle and the successor of Caligula. All right, let's go on. The matter of Claudius. Erase that little part right there. Sorry about that. Back to the pen. Here we go. The matter of Claudius becomes interesting since some say that the Jews were in Egypt already in Alexandria during the time of Tiberius Alexander. Now, Tiberius Alexander, as pointed out, was an Israelite who did not want to be in the laws of Israel, who died in 70 AD. There were Jews already in Egypt prior to the time of 70 AD who were killed. One of the arguments some people present is by saying, well, they were destroyed in 70 AD in Egypt. If they were destroyed in 70 AD in Egypt, then why do some people start talking about 70 AD in the temple in Jerusalem? See, the goal of these people is to try to just eliminate the understanding and the concept of the truth house of Israel. That's why. Let's go on. After the time of Claudius, we see Nero, and he died in 68 AD. But he had sent Vespasian to go against the Israelites who had conquered the lands known as Jotapata, Gamala, and Samaria. He and his son Titus, in 69 AD, agreed that Titus could stay in Israel while he went back to Rome to try to become the emperor. because there was a guy named Vatilins, and him and Vespasian was vying for the purple. When you hear about the purple, it's talking about ruler of Rome. When the timing happened that he took Jerusalem, he did so, and this is recorded in Josephus and in Tacitus. For those who don't like Josephus, Tacitus got the same record. Next slide, if we will. Chapter 7. Titus, according to some, took Israelites from Israel, the land, to the land of Egypt. Yet no one has shown evidence of such. Josephus, Wars of the Jews, Book 6, Chapter 9, does not say that he shipped them to Egypt. It says in Josephus, Wars of the Jews, Book 7, Chapter 5, that the triumph that was left in Egypt was shipped or sailed to Italy. According to both Josephus and Louis Furtwängler, in his book, The Jew of Rome, which you cannot get for less than $100. This book, The Jew of Rome, by Louis Furtwängler, you're not getting that for less than 100. Correct me if I'm wrong. We see that Titus crossed the desert. Titus crossed the desert. So about the Sinai Peninsula, the Sinai Desert. It was not necessary to use ships, although in ancient times some did. What are we pointing out for those to shatter the misunderstandings that have been said about the house of Israel? They generally like to say that the Israelites, brothers and sisters, were shipped over to Egypt by Titus in 70 AD. Yet, Titus is not noted for that. When you go in the book of Josephus, Wars of the Jews, book 7, chapter 5, it says that the triumph that was left in Egypt was sailed or shipped to Italy or Rome. So they was already in Egypt, brothers and sisters, and then shipped from Egypt to Rome. That's right in Josephus. But you know what? They swear we don't read. So this is why we're citing our sources. They were scattered after being plucked. Oh, pardon me. One thing I want to point out is that the Bible says the matter of Deuteronomy 28:68, after we read of the scattering and the plucking, they were scattered after being plucked, then worshiped idols, then did not have assurance of their life, then sent to Egypt in ships. We want to explain that Egypt to the Israelites was not a good place in regards to the Torah, but it must be emphasized to have Christianity blossom, the knowledge of the true Israelites cannot exist. The Son of the Most High is Yisrael or Israel. For Christianity to blossom, the name of Israel must not be in remembrance anymore. It must be cut off. There's a concept called replacement theology. Replacement theology is the teaching that says everything that was of Israel and the Most High has been transformed to Jesus Christ. So Lord and Savior, titles belonging to the Most High, was given to Jesus. Son, priest, and prophet, which were titles that some of the Israelites had, was all Jesus. So Lord, Savior, Son, priest, and prophet was all Jesus Christ in the concept of Christianity. So this is why when you find Israelites who are teaching what we're teaching regarding Deuteronomy 28, some don't understand what we're talking about. Some may disagree with what we're talking about. You understand? And so we're going to understand, hopefully, as this presentation goes along, what we're talking about. Next slide, please. Side notes on the discussion. Wisdom comes from many sources and is reflective of life experience, research, dedication, hard work, and commitment to searching for truth. You know who said that to me? My teacher's daughter. My first Israelite teacher was a man by the name of Moreh Yosef. May he rest in peace. His daughter is the one who told me that line that I just copied and pasted from the inbox right then and there. I copied it and pasted from the inbox conversation to what you're seeing right there. And what I'm going to do is take an intermission, get some water, and I want everyone to read what this is right here, because this is not about the book so much, but it's about information. And I'll be back in 40 seconds. Thank you for that timing. Okay, now let's go on. It says, and we want to use, brothers and sisters, the laser pointer. An act of 1849 is as follows. Every assemblage of Negroes for the purpose of instruction in reading and writing shall be an unlawful assembly. Any justice may issue his warrant to any officer or other person requiring him to enter any place where such assemblage may be and seize any Negro therein. And he or any other justice may order such Negro to be punished with stripes. If a white person assemble with Negroes for the purpose of instructing them to read or write, he shall be confined to jail not exceeding 6 months and fined not exceeding $100. What are we saying right here, brothers and sisters, about the Negro assemblage and reading? This comes, brothers and sisters, from the southern states in slavery. It was a crime for us to read. It was a crime to teach us how to read. So let's see what we're talking about in that regard, right? White supremacy is a myth. Their birth rate is low. They can't stand the sun. They have a president who does not know what he presides over. They have the highest percentage of assaults. They market their women for sex. They have to make children believe they are superior by indoctrination, not evidence. They have to try to outdo others in order to feel they accomplished something. When a black person starts to talk about, quote, white supremacy, you have just invoked your stance in their myth. They know they are not superior. They know they are not even united. They present that myth to us. The biggest issue they have is when a black person reads. There were laws against us reading, as we just read over here on the left-hand side. Their biggest fear is us uniting. That's why the assemblage matter was important. There were laws on their books against blacks uniting. We just read it right here. An act of 1849. Brothers and sisters, I want to cite where I got that source from. So those who are interested can, because we are allowed to read now, to go to this book right here and read it themselves. All right? This comes from a book called Stroud's Slave Laws by George M. Stroud. Brothers and sisters, right there. You can go online and look that up and see the information we was just talking about, that it was an unlawful gathering or assemblage of black people once it came down to them reading and writing, because that's what they feared. So when we start talking, unfortunately, white supremacy is not white supremacy. That's something that they try to sit there and beat us in the head. It's not white supremacy, it's black ignorance. I want to state this again. There's no such thing as, quote, white supremacy. The unfortunate reality is called more so black ignorance. And that's what these kind of books that I'm presenting are trying to smash and to decimate. Okay, let's go on, if we will, to the next part. Hebrew is easy. The ISBN number 978-1099-091100. This book is available on Amazon. The genre of this book is to cause one to know how to identify the Hebrew characters, and by aligning them with the vowels, one will be able to become a reader. A way to learn Hebrew. Learn the alphabet, learn the vowels. Once that happens, you are a reader. Learn your favorite vocabulary. Learn your favorite vocabulary. And I want to highlight that for edification purposes. Learn your favorite vocabulary. What do I mean by that, brothers and sisters? When I'm saying to the people to learn your favorite vocabulary is what? Whatever you're into, Learn that vocabulary first. If you're into being a writer, Katab is to write, Niyar is paper, Sefer is book. Okay, learn that vocabulary first. If you're into music, okay, the word nagain means to play a beat. The word taf means drum, and so the word zalil means sound. So those are things, those are words you're going to want to learn first when I'm emphasizing by saying learn your favorite vocabulary, then learn grammar. Once that happens, you are able to speak. Hebrew is easy. Thus we see, as we see here, Hebrew is easy. Hebrew basics from Aleph to Shamar, which is as we shown the ISBN number here, but those who are interested, right? Brothers and sisters, Hebrew is easy. It's not difficult. If these simple steps are followed, I promise you, you will sit there and gain it quickly because that will automatically gravitate to you because you're getting into what you're already into. So, like I'm saying, if you're into being a chef, the word tanor is stove, the word seared is pot, the word ash is fire, the word bishel means to cook. So, you're going to want to learn the vocabulary that's your favorite thing to do. That's my suggestion in that particular regard. All right. Once you learn grammar, you are able to speak, and your vocabulary just goes up from that point. And that's how easy it is. All right. Hebrew is easy. Why Hebrew understanding is important. This is the sixth letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It makes the W sound. We want to explain the matter. The word we see here, wow. Wow means hook. You see the word wow in the book of Exodus 38 in the Bible in the Hebrew. Exodus 38 has the word wow and it has the word wawim. Wawim means hooks. Now, why do I say and pick this particular one right here? There are many Israelites, and I want to write this for edification purposes, right? In ancient Hebrew, this letter will look as so. All right? Not to be confused with this letter here in ancient Hebrew, which would make the K or the Kaf aspect. This right here is the Waw in ancient Hebrew. So I want to erase the other one so there will be less confusion in that regard. All right. I just wanted to show that real quick. But what you're looking at right here is the ancient Hebrew way of writing the letter Waw. This is more so the Aramaic form of it. I'm going to explain that in a second. Many Israelites say that this letter here only makes the U sound. All right. That it only makes a U or an O sound, as in tool, pool, mule, and so forth. Brothers and sisters, that's not accurate. And I say this in due respect because when you go, as pointed out in Exodus 38, how would you say the word hook in Hebrew? If this letter, or shown in this letter here in Hebrew, ancient Hebrew, right? If we were to say this and show it like that, and it only makes the oo sound, right? Then how are you saying the word for hook in Hebrew? Ooh, woo, ooh. No, it itself has a letter designation as the W in English. All right, so this is something we want to point out in that particular regard. And it also serves as a prefix for the word and. Wa means and. So, brothers and sisters, this doesn't only have the aspect of an U sound, this also is a letter itself. And as we pointed out, when you put two of these letters together, wow, it spells just that wow, and the word wow means hook. And you see that in the Bible, in the Hebrew, in Exodus 38. If there's any questions, please feel free to comment on that particular regard. Next slide, please. Okay, now here is, brothers and sisters, the most controversial part of this presentation. And I say this and not to be arrogant. For the amount of time that I have been speaking online since 2014, when the channel Moray Yeshaya Torah Lessons was started, since I've been on the South Showtime, Maccabees TV, any camp I was in, and so forth and so on. It was never to be sort of understood that I was what you call messianic. Many of the brothers and sisters who subscribe to the channel, who have bought the books, who have patronized, who support and share and like, and have even contacted me, brothers and sisters, deem themselves as messianic. And I don't even subscribe to the term messianic or non-messianic, because nowhere in the 66 books in the King James do you even see the word messianic. You don't see messianic in the New Testament, the 27 writings in the New Testament, or the 39 writings of the Old Testament. You don't see messianic in here. So thus, non-messianic, just like messianic, is a misnomer. But I put the title in the book there for edification purpose, so people know what is being discussed. Okay, now, Old Testament Israelites respond to Messianic Israelites. The ending there, I say no disrespect intended. I know people will not agree. Of all the books that was written, brothers and sisters, this is the one that nobody really seems to have asked me about to talk about, to really get into, and so forth and so on. Many brothers and sisters who are deemed as non-Messianic or who are Old Testament based, brothers and sisters, already are under the understanding of such. So this is an Israelite brother who is deemed as non-Messianic, more so called Old Testament based, brothers and sisters, and we are presenting our stance on this, what we state, so there won't be no misunderstandings, because a lot of memes have gone out that's incorrect. One misunderstanding that I saw was, oh, Old Testament Israelites don't talk about the history after the Old Testament like with the Romans. What are you talking about? The book that was written on Deuteronomy 28 gets into Pompey and the Romans. It talks about Vespasian. But see, we want to point this out because many do not know the stance we have. Thus, this book is written for them. I know it's not going to be agreed with many people, but we wanted to sit there and state the purpose for edification purposes. Next slide, if we will. And the ISBN number, as you saw, was there. A part usually brought to OT or Old Testament Hebrews. Proverbs chapter 30, verse 4. Who hath ascended up into heaven or descended? Who hath gathered the wind in his fist? Who hath bound the waters in a garment? Who hath established all the ends of the earth? What is his name? Let's remember that part right there. And what is his son's name, if thou canst tell? Now, it's asked a question in Proverbs chapter 30 by saying, who hath ascended up into heaven or descended? So let's see what the Old Testament itself says, or the scriptures itself says. Exodus chapter 19, verse 18. Now Mount Sinai was altogether on smoke, because the Lord Yah descended upon it in fire, and the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. The above scripture lets us know the Most High descended. Let's go on to the next part. Wind. Because as we read right here in Proverbs chapter 30, verse 4, who hath gathered the wind in his fist? Let's see what the book itself says. Amos chapter 4, verse 13. For lo, he that formed the mountains and created the wind, and declareth unto man what is his thought, that maketh the morning darkness, and treadeth upon the high places of the earth. The Lord, the God of hosts, is his name. So when we going into, we can see what we're talking about, because it asks at the end of Proverbs 30, verse 4, what is his name? Amos answered it by saying what? The Lord, the God of hosts, is his name. So we can begin to see where we're going, brothers and sisters, in this particular regard. It says, and God remembered Noah in Genesis 8, verse 1. And God remembered Noah and every living creature, and all the cattle that was with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters assuaged. So who controls the wind in his fist? The Most High, the Creator, Yah. That's who does that. We can see who controls the wind. Next part. Let's go back to Proverbs 30, verse 4, so we can see where we're going in this particular case, right? Who has bound the waters in a garment? Who hath established all the ends of the earth? Those are questions being asked. So let's go and see what the book itself says concerning this. Earth, Isaiah chapter 40 and Isaiah chapter 44. Hast thou not known? That's a question also being asked. Hast thou not heard that the everlasting God, Yah, the creator of the ends of the earth, fainteth not, neither is weary. There is no searching of his understanding. In Isaiah chapter 44, we see the following. Thus saith the Lord thy Redeemer, and he that formed thee from the womb. I am, not we are. I am, Ani. I am Yah, that maketh all things, that stretch forth the heavens alone, and spreadeth abroad the earth by myself. So, brothers and sisters, when we go back to the question that is asked, all right, in Proverbs chapter 30, verse 4, when it says, who hath bound the waters in a garment, and who hath established the ends of the earth? Now, when we go back to Isaiah chapter 44, let's read, because it's asking who has established the ends of the earth. It says, thus saith the Lord thy Redeemer, and he that formed thee from the womb. The question is answered here. I am Yah that maketh all things, that stretch forth the heavens alone, that spreadeth abroad the earth by myself. So it's not even for us to wonder who Proverbs chapter 30 is talking about so far. It says this, water. Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 35. Thus saith the Lord, that giveth the sun for a light by day, and the ordinances of the moon and of the stars for a light by night, that divideth the sea when the waves thereof roar. The Lord of hosts is his name. So who's the controller of all of that? Yah. So there should be no misunderstanding about who the questions are pertaining to in the beginning of Psalms chapter 30, verse 4. His name, Exodus chapter 6. And I appeared unto Abraham, unto Isaac, and unto Jacob by the name El Shaddai, God Almighty. But by my name, Yod He Wah He, said by pronunciation by different Israelites, was I not known to them. His son's name, Exodus chapter 4, verse 22. And thou shalt say unto Pharaoh, thus saith the Lord, Yisrael is my son, even my firstborn. And thou shalt say unto Pharaoh, Wa amorata el paro, ko amor yorewahe, beni bikori Yisrael. Israel is my son, even my firstborn. So now, brothers and sisters, when we go back in the book of Proverbs, right? And it says, who hath ascended up into heaven or descended? The Most High is the one who's noted in Exodus as descending. Who hath gathered the wind in his fist? We already explained that in the book of Amos. Who hath bound the waters in a garment? We already went over that in the book of Genesis. Who hath established the ends of the earth? We went over that in the book of Isaiah. What is his name? Exodus chapter 6 says his name is Yod He Wah He, or YHWH in English transliteration. And what is his son's name? His son is the Yisrael, or Israel. See, that's what we were talking about. See, this book here that we're talking about, Old Testament Israelites' response to Messianic Israelites, this is a part of that book that we just went over. So when we state that we want to explain our stance, this is what we're talking about. So there will be no misunderstanding. We are able to see that the Most High controls the water, wind, and created the earth, and his name is YHWH. And the name of his son is Israel. It is very important to address the matter of Isaiah 53. There are Israelites who argue with other Israelites about the matter of Isaiah 53. We want to let it be noted that the servant and servants from Isaiah chapter 40 to Isaiah chapter 54 did not change. The servant that we read of from Isaiah 40 to Isaiah 54 was consistently Israel, Israel, Jacob, Israel, Jacob, Jacob, Israel. The Most High servant didn't change in those 14 chapters. All right? The Israelites are called that, the servant and servants. Isaiah chapter 48, brothers and sisters, as well as Leviticus chapter 25. Read those chapters. And you will see that. If there's any questions concerning what we went over, let me know. All right? Next slide, please. These are available on Amazon. Egypt talking writing. Did the Torah come from the culture of Talmudi? Hebrew is easy. Hebrew basics from Aleph to Shamar. Old Testament Israelites respond to Messianic Israelites. Deuteronomy 28, history untold to the masses. All 4 of these books are available on Amazon for those who want it. How to get the books we talked about. Get all 4 of them for $70, signed by me and shipped via FedEx. Care to do so? You go to PayPal, hkashub@yahoo.com. HKASHUB@yahoo.com. Or you can text or call me, 908-587-4841. And to date, there's nobody who can say that they paid for a book and they did not get it. I don't operate like that. I'm not perfect, but you're not going to sit there and get the payment sent, and I'm going to sit there and act like I didn't get it and not know what in the world is going on. You know, they're not going to sit there and say, oh, this brother Yeshaya, he took my money and I didn't get my book. That's something I stand by. If you pay for it, you'll get it. You understand? Any questions concerning what we went over? Questions or comments concerning what we went over? Let's go on, if you will, to the next slide. But I want to emphasize something, brothers and sisters. This book here, Egypt Talking Writing, that's $25. Hebrew is easy, brothers and sisters. This book is $10. Old Testament Israelites respond to Messianic Israelites. This book right here, brothers and sisters, is $20. Deuteronomy 28, verses 15 to 68 is $25. So 25, 20, 10, 25. That comes up to 80. That's why for the bundle that I was talking about, you can send $70 to the PayPal, and I will send all 4 of them signed, shipping and handling included, not excluded, and I will send it to the address that you will want me to send it to signed for $70. So you can cut out Amazon, the middleman, if you wanted to, for those who are interested. For those who did so, thank you. For those who do it through Amazon, thank you. All right? So are there any questions concerning the presentation as we've gone over? And brothers and sisters, I want to emphasize this because I know that there are Israelites who ask me periodically, brother, why do you shave? Only because of the job. I will never advertise that an Israelite brother should shave his beard. And I'll state the reason why you see me there as such is because of the employment and the job matter. All right? And this is why I be talking about the aspect of us getting our stuff together so we ain't got to sit there and deal with these other kind of jobs under the nation. All right? So let's go on, if we will, to the next slide, if we will. Conclusion, afterword. As stated, brothers and sisters, I already know, feel, and understand that many people will disagree with some of the stuff that was presented. I know everyone is not going to agree with everything. The information has already been presented to the people for those who are interested in it. I can be reached one more time, 908 587 4841 for those who are interested. Any questions or comments concerning this, feel free to contact me. Also at the email, hkashub@yahoo.com. And that's the same email to send PayPal for those who are interested. Giving honor and praise unto the Creator, the maker of heaven and earth. We started about 8:30. It's now 10 p.m. The presentation is concluded. Shalom.